YouTube? Welcome back to Unix TCG, and today we will be hitting up the last in the Why or Why Should You Not Play series for the Treasure Cups. Last deck coming out of set 1 that we are going to be focusing on, and then we'll be moving on to the Juicy set 2 parts. So I do want to say thank you guys for the support. We are about to hit 4,000 subscribers, and that's crazy considering we started out this month at 3K, and we're gonna keep it going with multiple card games as well as this one. So hey, stay tuned, buckle in, because the content train is coming. Past that, want to say if you want to support this channel, you can always hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, press the notification button so you never miss a beat, and comment to help it for the algorithm, but also so I can see your thoughts, respond to them as soon as I can. The Discord is in the description, you can join there. And then lastly, I do want to say that if you do want any help playing this game, I do offer coaching services. 18 an hour. We can focus on exactly what you want to do, whether it be logic, sequencing, just the matchups. We can play the games open-handed. We can do a lot of stuff. I offer pretty much an experience that's tailored exactly to what you want to shore up on. And we can play on Untap, we can play in webcam, we can play in sim. So you really choose the arena, and we go to work on trying to up your game. And now, since that's all over with, let's actually hop into the deck. Yeah. So the leader we're focusing on, no surprise, is Oden. He is a green leader that says once per turn you can trash a Land of Wano card in your hand to untap or turn 2 Dawn to active mode. So basically, for a lot of Dragon Ball players, this guy is kind of a sensu. You just discard the Land of Wano card, untap 2. But yeah, he's going to basically make sure that you can use your Dawn in a lot of crazy ways. The same way that people felt like Luffy makes you essentially 1 Dawn up per turn, this is actually going to put you up 2 Dawn up per turn in exchange for you losing a card in hand. And this is very simple. It's actually not really that hard to go into. You could play something for 4, trash a Land of Wano card in your hand, and then you have 2 up. And that 2 could be another 1-drop blocker. That could be a 2-drop blocker. That could be Punk Gibson in hand. There's the applications that you can do this with are crazy. And for a cost of a card in hand, it's going to extend your plays. So the question is here, why green with Oden instead of Kid? Because what you're going to see are a lot of cards that are overlapping between these 2 decks. But the difference is all in the leader. Whereas Kid is an aggressive leader with a defensive deck, Oden is a utility focused leader with a defensive deck. So you're going to be able to make sure your Dawn does more, which means you can play more cards in a turn than your opponent. And for anybody that's played a resource-based game, a deck that can play more cards than your opponent can just based off of mechanics is generally going to be a deck that can put itself ahead if one key thing is met, one key condition, and we're going to talk about that key in the summary to why or why not you should play this deck, in my opinion. So going on, we are going to now discuss the cards that make this deck. And like I said, we're going to go a little fast simply because a lot of these cards, they already kind of have been talked about. First and foremost, we're going to talk about the advantage card, the Searchers. And what we have here, first and foremost, is Momo. Now, Momo, even in this deck, sometimes doesn't feel as impactful as Bonnie, but you're going to be upping your Land of Wano count, and so this card will have more targets, and so it will miss less. And I say miss less because sometimes in the Kid deck, it can miss, but it will miss a whole lot less in this deck. Moving past that, you have Bonnie. And the reason why I'm going to say this is still more impactful is because card for card, this is still searching some of your bigger bombs. Your 8-drop kit if you play it, your 7-drop kit if you play it. It's searching out your Laws if you play it. It's searching out the Killer Destruction if you play it. There's still so many cards that this is picking up that are going to turn the tide of battles. So yes, another advantage card. And then we have Rizzo. And you guys have already been told about how this one works. It's actually very crazy because you have these 2 on the field. You pay 1 to tap this, you go off your top 5, then you swing. And since this guy is going to cause you to draw, when he swings, if you have 2 or more rested characters, draw. So just by activating a searcher like Momonosuke or Bonnie, you're going to be able to then use their effects, tap this guy's swing for a total of 2 cards gained, which in this game, it's very hard to combat that. Like in terms of like saying, oh, that's not good. +2 is crazy because this game actually doesn't have very many +1s. Next, we're going to go to the utility. Green is known for tapping things down, but if you did notice before in the Kid video, all the cards that were tapping your opponent's cards down on bodies were all Land of Wano. So not only are you going to be playing cards like Nekamamushi, like Izo, like Okiku, but they are going to be able to be blown up in hand. This is mostly going to apply to Okiku the most because Okiku has no counter cost. And these, you know, they're cheaper to play. Well, cheaper to play, and this is a 2K, so you don't always want to go blowing these up. But the point is, these cards are going to be able to do their normal tapping business, but because you're playing a deck like this, you can get away with playing 4 Okiku without counter cost, because if anything, she can turn into more Dawn to play other cards. And that is the craziest part about this deck. As for removal, you still have the normal killer that's going to blow up stuff, 3 cost or less. And if you can find the room, you can play Hawkins. If you don't play Hawkins, you're probably going to have a very, very rough time facing the mirror, but because you have the untap 2 skill, you can better protect your bombs once they go sideways. So that's always something to look at. Hawkins is going to be able to apply pressure like he does in any other red deck, but he's also going to be able to be protected because untapping 2 is nice. As for defense, nothing changes between this and the kid deck. You've got Beige, which is the 1-drop blocker. You have got Killer, which is a 2-drop blocker. You've got Law, which is a, 5-drop blocker. But in this case, you have to understand any turn you use your leader effect, you're essentially taking off the effective energy cost. So on a turn that you use Law and then blow up a Land of Wano card, you could also use, or bounce back a Land of Wano card, you can also use that card to untap 2, and then bang. You are sitting here playing Law essentially for 3, which is wonderful. Great momentum. And then lastly, if you decide to have the room, this is going to help out your green matchups a lot, but the Kid 7-drop, all these things. So that's actually pretty cool. And then I do want to say that, like, we're going through a lot of cards. You're seeing some cards from starters, you're seeing some cards from the set, but I do have to fit in a quick word from our sponsor. Like I said, I'm going to shove these in where I can. I do know that the sealed product is pretty much gummed up through set 3 because you have to get in there like 3 or 4 months ahead of time. However, you can still sell cards to them on Facebook. You can also, hit up singles and TCG players. So I'm just going to let the ad say the rest, So let's talk about our sponsor, Mystic TCG, your one-stop shop for all of your trading card game needs. On their site, you can buy or pre-order starter decks, boxes, even cases, as long as you try to give it about 3 to 4 months ahead of time for the pre-orders, because sometimes the product's a little too hot to keep on the shelves. If you want singles, you can go over to their TCG Player website, where you'll find nothing but product and great reviews. And if you even want to sell your collections, just hop on over to their Facebook page and message them directly, and you get a price worked out for you, best bang for your buck. And you know what? While you're here, let me throw you a little something extra. If you want 5% off of any purchases made on the site, make sure you use the link in the description, or at checkout, use the code WORSTGEN. That'll be on the screen as well, and I hope you find something you like with Mystic TCG. Like I said, it's a little too late to get in on some of the pre-orders, but singles will be on TCG Player, and you can always sell. So, there are a couple of things that we're going to have to get into for the rest of this deck. This is going to be where it starts to differentiate. Next, we're going to go into bomb cards, okay? And this is right off the start. We're going to put it out there. We're going to go with Denjiro, okay? Denjiro is an amazing card for this deck. First off, he's 5K, or he's 5-drop for 7,000 power. That's huge in itself. But the other thing is his when attacking ability, which is nuts in itself. It is a Dawn 1. And of course, you paid 5 to get there. You're definitely going to have him there, like, to just, you're going to have that Dawn to use him. It's not a hard investment. But when you swing with this guy, and he's going to be 8K, you are then going to untap 2 Dawn. That's right, set 2 Dawn to active, and that is actually beyond crazy. There's a couple of reasons why this card is good, and it's a little more subtle than just untap 2. One, he is a 5-drop for 7K. That means that unless they have an Otama to go in on it, a profile card that is both high and low profile. He doesn't do anything crazy, but he enables bigger Dawn economy, which is crazy in a deck that can have as many searches as this deck can. But he is going to be able to untap 2. He's swinging in for 8, which means he can contest 8-drop Kid with very minimal investment. It's actually insane. The immunity to Jet Pistol, on top of him being a 5-drop, on top, he's just like a perfect number and stat line to get around a lot of destruction without your opponent having to go a little further out of their way. On top of that, he's going to be able to essentially for not dropping any cards in hand. Use your leader's effect, and if you so choose in a turn when you use both this guy and your leader's effect, you are actively using 4 more Dawn at the cost of 1 Dawn and 1 card in your hand. So if you're at a full cost of 10 Dawn for the turn and this guy's already on the board, for the cost of 1 card in hand and 1 of your Dawn, you're essentially using up to 13 Dawn that turn. Insane. Don't even have to explain it more than that. That's crazy. Next, you have the beauty himself, depending on, what you're going off of. You got Yamato. And Yamato is a card where I said was very win more in Kid, but in this deck, not only are you going to be building it more off Wano, so she's a 1K that can be popped for an additional 2. You can now play her for 5 and then pop a land of Wano card and refund and be able to protect her a lot better. But you're also there's just the synergy is better, and because the synergy is better for her, I do actually believe she deserves at least a 2-slot spot in this deck. You just have more Wano synergy, and she is going to be able to be searched. Like in the other deck, you wouldn't play Momonosuke right off the rip when you have Bonnie. In this deck, you may actually decide to play Momonosuke to make sure you get your stuff off of the board, and in that case, she's going to be easier to pick up. Next, you have Kinemon. And Kinemon is definitely a cool card. If your leader is a Kouzuki Oden, so he is leader locked, play 1 let me actually make sure I don't pronounce that wrong. Akazaya 9 card with 3 or less from your hand. Okay, that's pretty cool. Now his thing is Dawn X1 when attacking once per turn, you can untap one of those Akazaya 9 cards with 3k or 3 costs or less. Just doing that. You can untap it, send it to active mode, and this is going to lead to a lot of plays. This is going to be one of the more destructive parts about this deck. Let's say you have one Izad already, right? You are going to be, actually, let me go into the cards that actually benefit off this the most. These are the 3 cards that are generally going to be able to be untapped or played to this effect. It's great because playing a Nekomamushi can tap something down for your leader to swing over. Playing a Raizo without having to actually pay its cost is wonderful. Playing an Okiku without actually having to pay its cost is also wonderful. Now, when you are going for the swing with him, it is this one that matters. It's these 2 that matter, because these guys have effects that are just once per turn, which kind of sucks. But the point is, these guys are going to be most effective. I kind of took out Nekomamushi because Nekomamushi is a straight up cost or stat line lower. Like, he is a 3k. So you're going to have to already invest some Dawn. At least with these 2, you have a neutral 5k, you have a neutral 5k in Okiku. But if you used Okiku's effect this turn, Okiku's swinging at no less than 6k. And then Raizo, you only have to add 1 to him to be able to do that. Now, I will tell you right now, it is strictly because of this card, Kinemon, and maybe 1 or 2 other cards in this set that these guys are both once per turn. Because if they weren't, this guy would be able to abuse these horrendously. But the point is, this is the momentum card. Like, when you start looking at Okiku, you're going to be able to have turns where you swing and tap something with Okiku, and then you swing on it with your leader, maybe a block or something. Swing with Kinemon, untap Okiku, swing with Okiku again. And that's actually just going to be horrendous momentum. Past that, the next boss card we're going to talk about is 8-drop Kid. That's right, it's green, you're still going to play him. This deck is still going to put up blocker after blocker, and on top of that, if you do play something like Kid, not only do you have another swinger every turn, but you're actually going to be able to have a safer Kid turn. If you're playing extras like Punk Gibson and whatnot, you can play Kid, do his Dawn thing, then trash a Land of Wano card to untap 2 and have Punk Gibson ready, making this guy infinitely easier to defend on his first turn out. And if you can defend Kid on his first turn out, he is easier to defend every single turn after that. So this deck actually plays Kid better on its first turn than a normal Kid deck. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the defensive cards. I think only 2 really matter here, just because of the space. You have to play a lot of these Wano cards. And those 2 are actually Paradise Waterfall. This card is searchable because you're using the Momos, but you're going to be using the Momos a lot more in this deck, and this is a Land of Wano card. So once again, it's never dead in your hand. You can use it, it can be triggered, you can also pop it with Oden. And that's actually really cool. Let me make sure you can pop it with Oden, because it's a, It's not a character, it's a card. So yeah, this works. Now the thing about this too is that this inherently works better when you are running bigger blockers. And these two are big. When you were doing these things, you are putting up this guy to 9k and untapping him. Oops, I'm sorry. You're putting this guy up to 8k and attacking with him. You're putting this guy up to 9k, sorry, and untapping him. I said attacking. So these guys are going to get very big, easier to defend, and they're going to untap to be able to block again, which is monstrous. But you're also going to be able to protect so many cards. If they swing on Okiku for 6 and you end up hitting it with Paradise Waterfall, bringing it up to 7 and untapping it, that's great. Kinemon, it's already a 6 cost. They swing on it for 7, which is kind of a good testing number. They're probably going to swing on it for 8. And you can Paradise Waterfall, untap your investment, put a 1k on it, and he's there for next turn. Denjiro, incredibly easy to defend. That dude is 7,000. He will go up to 9,000 and then untap himself and provide you with so much value the next turn. So these are all the things when it comes to, you know, Oden, which are cool. Now, this is going to be where we talk about why or why shouldn't you, right? And the honest to goodness reason I think that this deck can be better in some cases than Kid, but and oftentimes worse. This deck, this game even, does not currently plus many cards. You are constantly losing cards, you are constantly breaking even, but not often are you going to be able to look at your hand and be like, wow, I am plussing on plussing on plussing, and this is why I'm where I'm at, okay? And with that being the case, the only cards that upset that economy, realistically, are these cards. These +1s that every turn you leave them on the board, they net you more. Bonnie and Momonosuke are break evens the turn you play them and use them. Every time they survive past their first activation to a new activation, they are +1s. Same with Raizo. He is a, oops, I keep doing that. Break even the first time he uses his effect. You played him one turn, the next turn he swings, he gets his effect off, you break even. However, every single turn past that, he's a +1. These are the cards that do that. However, you have to have them survive and you have to protect them, and protecting them can sometimes mean losing a blocker, losing a Paradise Waterfall. And the fact of the matter is, when you're going on that, these guys have to go, things have to go pretty well for you to keep these guys on board all game. They're easy to remove, easy to swing on. And if these guys don't stay on the game, or stay on the board for that long, you are losing more and more cards. And some people may be like, okay, well, what's the point of losing a card? I was going to use it anyway. Well, that's what I was to say earlier. The deck that can play more cards than the other deck by nature is generally the one that's ahead. If and only if it's also drawing enough cards to play. Because you can see twice, you can play twice as many cards as your opponent, okay? But if you play them twice as fast and you aren't gaining cards at an accelerated rate, you are going to hand out. You are going to play those cards twice as fast and then be like, wow, I have nothing else to play. And when you have nothing else to play, you're relying off your top deck. If your opponent breaks your board once, it's over. And so this deck is going to be able to play cards faster, but to do that, you are getting rid of cards from your hand. So you're playing your normal plays, you're playing maybe an additional auxiliary play, but you destroyed a card to get there. You are burning through your cards way faster than your opponent. And if you don't burn through your cards, if you're not using your leader's effect, then why are you playing your leader? What does he do that Kid isn't quite doing for you? At least when Kid can finally use his effect, it's ending the game. This is going to generally, or applying pressure where it needs to be. This leader is using this to gain more Dawn, but you don't always necessarily have the setup that's going to sustain you playing an extra card after you've blown up a card in your hand. So fact of the matter is, for me, Oden gives you a more interesting turn of play, and it feels great because you're using more Dawn than you ever had access to in the game. But unless you have very good setups where you are maintaining a heightened advantage over your opponent, you're going to be sitting in a state where you're just low on hand, you can't counter for that much, and your opponent just needs to break your board one good time, and you're pretty much out of the game. So that is how I definitely feel with this deck. I feel like it's in no way, shape, or form better than Kid, and the ways that it's different in a good way, are kind of situational. But I want you guys to let me know what you feel like in the comments, because this is an open forum of discussion and I would love to hear your opinion. So thank you guys. I will see you in the next video, whether it be Dragon Ball Battle Spirits, and we will be moving into set 2 of One Piece very, very, very soon. I think I've got a guest star coming up on the channel for One Piece, so look forward to that, and I will see you in the next video. Later.